Hello and welcome to She Boss Talk. I am Shantae Roddy. We are here for our monthly She Boss Author Spotlight. This is where we spotlight amazing women authors, and we have a wonderful author here with us today who we are going to interview. She has a very powerful and inspiring story that she's going to share with all of us today. Her name is Marcy Myles-Clark, and her book is Praying Wife Praying Wife, Healed Husband. So we're going to get into talking with her, and I want her to just introduce herself. So hi, Marcy.
Hello, how are you?
I'm so great. I'm so excited to have you on here today and be able to speak with you regarding this amazing book that I think is going to be so helpful for our audience. So tell us a little bit about your book.
Sure. So our book is called Praying Wife, Healed Husband, How We Survived a Death-Defying COVID-19 Experience. It's a faith-based book. It's a memoir, and it talks about my husband's death-defying experience early in the pandemic as Johns Hopkins' sickest COVID patient. We talk about the faith-based experience. I formed a prayer group early on, which ended up expanding internationally. And we literally prayed him back to good health. And so we tell our story. I track the progress. I mean, he's literally a modern day biblical miracle. And you just see how, they weren't expecting him to live and how he just slowly but surely responded to our prayers and how he ended up just really coming full circle after being on the ventilator for almost a month. And he was literally an Easter miracle. And the week after Easter, he was able to breathe on his own and come off of the ventilator. And so we talk about the story, from a faith-based perspective, talk about the power of faith and prayers. But then I also take it a few steps further and I put resources, really good resources in the book, a lot of the resources, spiritual and practical resources that really helped us, and helped us through. And now that we're on the other side, Shantae, our goal is really to be able to, spearhead and share those resources with other people so that they too can make it through, an unexpected crisis.
Yes, I think a lot of people can relate to this story as we're still in the height of the pandemic. So to walk us through, I know you gave us like an overview of the story, and this is such a blessing that he was able to make, survive that.
Yeah.
And have healing. So as to be able to experience a modern day miracle. So
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, know that miracles are still happening, but just take us a little bit, walk us through the story and how and when he contracted COVID. Now, was it just him or did you contact COVID as well?
We both did. We both mysteriously contracted COVID. To this day, we don't know how. We're both kind of busybodies. We're all over. We both work with the public. We go to a big mega church. We were in any number of different places during that time. And so we really can't pinpoint, how we actually contracted it. All we know is that we contracted it, pretty early on in the pandemic, early March. It manifested itself like around, like the 13th of March or something like that. And we actually got our diagnosis on March 17th. I ended up being mild. I was, not asymptomatic because I had symptoms, but they were really mild, it kind of mimicked like a sinus infection. And I get that all the time. So it was really not a big deal to me. My husband, on the other hand, he just, he got really sick really quickly. It started off really as just, he was just tired, fatigue. And then he developed this, fever and then a vicious cough. And one thing led to another over the weekend. It was like Friday was our last working day. Saturday, we both were feeling just tired. We just thought, we are just working really hard and, that we probably just overdid it. And then next thing you know, he started, just getting sicker and progressively sicker. So over the weekend, I just kept, nursing him, just giving him like Tylenol, trying to break, his fever. His fever was intermittent, like between like 99 and 100. And it was getting progressively worse. And I was like, babe, if you get over 101, if your fever reaches over 101, I'm gonna take you to urgent care. And that's what happened, like clockwork. His fever escalated to 101. So first thing Monday morning, we were at Patient First, which is our local urgent care that's really done, right by us in the past. And so, we put on our masks and stuff because COVID was here, but it was still not mainstream. And, we definitely didn't think it was going to happen to us. So we put on our mask and gloves and we went over to Patient First. And so, they tested both of us at that time, just to show you how early on it was. They weren't even doing COVID tests, routinely, but they were on guard. They knew about the symptoms. And so they tested both of us for RSV and strep and flu, and we were negative. And so just because, he had all the symptoms, they referred us over to the hospital and we got a COVID test. And so 24 hours later, sure enough, we both came back positive with COVID. So by then, this was Tuesday, the 17th. And my husband was still, not really feeling well. And he just kind of, got progressively worse. And he started feeling a little better, like come, Wednesday, something like that. His fever broke and all, but he still had that cough. And so, I was in touch with his doctors and, the doctor told me, keep an eye on him. If he, continues with that cough, then we need to bring him into the ER just to make sure there's nothing going on in those lungs. And so come Friday, I just really felt uncomfortable. The weekend was approaching. I said, let me go and get, him to the ER. Let me consult the doctor. So I called his doctor. By the time we connected, it was kind of late on Friday. And he says, no, he's still coughing. Get him to the ER immediately. It's been too long and this is how people are dying. That was enough for me. So we got dressed and I got him, to the hospital in record time. The doctor, as it turns out, we have a really good relationship with, and he actually had called ahead and the nurses were actually, and this is the same hospital, by the way, where we had a COVID test earlier in the week. And so the nurse was actually on the curb waiting for us, which ended up being a blessing. And I'll tell you in a minute why. So she actually, met my husband at the curb. She triaged him, did his, vitals, and he was fine. And I pulled off and then I circled back and I said, how's his, his fever? And she said, oh, he's normal. So I said, oh, good. We're okay. I thought we were good to go. And so I went and parked because they wouldn't let me in. Obviously, we were double jeopardy because I had COVID as well. And so I had to park in the parking lot and just wait for him. So, I was literally waiting about 45 minutes, just expecting him to go in, maybe get some medication or treatment, come back out. So after about 45 minutes, my phone, I didn't have any calls and I was getting a little nervous. So I actually called my husband's cell phone and he didn't answer. He called me back like 5 minutes later. He put the doctor on the phone and the doctor said the famous words that I'll never forget. He says, yes, things are, a lot worse than we envisioned here. And we're going to have to do an emergency intubation, which means we have to put him on a ventilator, because he was in lung failure. And I was just floored, as you can imagine. I mean, I'm thinking all types of thoughts, I'm like, is this the last time I'm going to see my husband? Was that the last time I'm going to see, that I saw him? And, so I had to give my permission for him to get, the emergency intubation. I wasn't able to see him. They wouldn't let me in. And, and the rest just kind of went from there, so they kept him overnight in the hospital in the ICU. This was at Johns Hopkins. This was at a local Johns Hopkins here in the Columbia, Maryland area. And so he stayed overnight there, and then they were able to transfer him over to Johns Hopkins main hospital in Baltimore the next day. And that's where he would stay. He was there for 46 days, and 28 of those days he spent in a medically induced coma on the ventilator. And when I tell you that prayer and faith works, I mean, for a long time, I've had prayers and faith and I've known the power of them. But I mean, I've never been tested so much as I had been, in my most recent adult life as I had during that time period. And, sometimes you just don't have anything else. I couldn't see, my husband. I didn't know the doctors. I had no idea. The only thing I could do was just trust and just pray that he was in good hands. And, I did that. We're empty nesters. So I was home by myself. I always say I was home alone, but I wasn't alone because, my family, our families just rallied around us like you can't imagine. We just have an amazing support group of family and friends. And as soon as they found out, everybody just, tuned in, and we just started praying. We just started praying, and, the power of prayers. And, in the very beginning, it was really just touch and go. He was just so sick. Like I said, they actually coined him Johns Hopkins sickest COVID patient because he was just so sick. And that was so early on. This was before, the monoclonal antibodies and vaccines and all the things that they have right now. And, as my bishop said, it was just his body and God just, fighting our prayers, fighting it out. And, there were just times when he had a number of life-threatening events, episodes kind of back to back. There was one time when I actually got a call, 5 o'clock in the morning, and they pretty much told me that his oxygen levels had plummeted to a point that if they were to drop any further, they wouldn't be able to do anything else. And they were talking about, end of life measures, mouth to mouth, resuscitation and chest compression, just the things that you don't want to hear. And, my husband was 56 years old. He was healthy, and just to see, literally like somebody go in, a healthy person. And then, the next time we were able to see him, he was on a ventilator with tubes coming out of everywhere. And the only reason why we were able to see him that day is because they didn't think he was going to make it through the day. And so they did let 3 of us in. We had 3 family members in, and we went in, we laid hands on him, and we prayed him right on out of that ordeal. And there were a few leading up to that and a few after, and we would just go into prayer, literally. And then when I'd get back on the phone with his doctors, they say, yeah, he's normalized, he's stable. And so, we got to a really good groove after, the second, third episode, a couple of weeks into where we were like, hey, we got this, we just gonna pray on it. He's gonna be all right. And that's what we did. And that's literally what happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's dig in a little deeper. I'm so glad that you all were able actually to go in and see him, because for so many people, they never did. They weren't even given the opportunity to even get in the room.
Yes.
To pray, to just be with them, to hug them.
Yes. You're absolutely right.
That had to even be more devastating, but it had to be very scary. But in the midst of, being nervous, there maybe some nervousness setting in, you all gathered around, you had a support system, which is good. You put your faith to work, you pray. Let's talk a little bit more about that, of what actually helped you get through this crisis. And so you can share with others to help them kind of get through it. Because whether it's, other families dealing with COVID or other crises that are going on as a result of COVID, or even non-related crises that we go through every day in our lives. How were you all able to get through that?
Yeah, well, it's funny that you asked, because now that we're on the other side, that's exactly what we talk about. We talk about how you can incorporate resources proactively so that you too can win in or out of a pandemic. A lot of these resources translate to anything. It's really about, preparation and planning, for the next unexpected crisis or unexpected episode. Like, again, my bishop says, you're either going to in a storm, you either just got out of one, or you're either going to go through one, right? But unfortunately, that's kind of just how life is. It's just cyclical, right? So if you're not in a crisis, or you behind one, then there's probably going to be one soon. So it really pays, to really to get the lessons so that you can buffer yourself for future crisis. And so, we really talk about, there's a couple things like spiritual, we break it down, spiritual as well as financial and practical resources. On the spiritual side of things, the biggest two are really just building what I call those fruitful faith, and that's just faith in abundance. And that's not something that you can just like get or that you can use overnight. You have to build on that so that when you need it, it's there, right?
Yes.
Same as, prayers, like, powerful prayers, proactive prayers. Prayer is conversation, with God. You have to build that relationship. If I said, Shantae, if I just reached out to you when I needed something, then it might be harder for you to be able to respond to me than if we had built a relationship, and I talk to you all the time about the good, the bad, and different. So you have to build, that relationship. I talk about what I call microwave meditation, and sometimes you just have to go into, you just got to find your happy place, wherever that is, because there's just so many different things going on in life right now that you have to just, be able to, find your own space. I talk about journaling. I call it joyful journaling. And for me, that was everything, because there was just so many unknowns, so many different things going on. And I was working a full-time job, and I was talking to his nurses and doctors several times a day, and I was charting his progress. And that actually ended up, for me, being a large portion of my book. I was really at the time just journaling and, taking progress notes, really just to stay sane and just, keeping my mind healthy, all those things, because, your mind, your body, soul, all those things work together. So that was my way of really just keeping my mind in check. And so, but it ended up being, not only was it just a release for me, but it also just charted where I was, my thought processes during that time. And I actually share a lot of that in our book. So you can kind of see my own personal journey during this time. And hopefully it'll be inspiration, to some people, and they can understand exactly where I was, during some really tough times. And also talk about, what I call rapid relaxation. And again, that's just like kind of like the woo-saw kind of, you just gotta, whatever that is, for some people, it may be, and it doesn't have to be, none of these things cost a lot of money. None of them take a lot of time. You can implement them pretty easily and cost effectively, so whatever relaxation looks like to you. For me, I love the water. So anything water, really, whether it's a bath or a shower, or, even just hearing the sound of water, just it's very relaxing. I also like good music, any, good hip hop, upbeat, R&B, gospel music. That's my thing, so when I'm in, a not so good place, I can just, listen to good music. So, you have to find those things that really, really, just feed your mind, body, and spirit when you're really in, not so good places sometimes. It's really good to do those things proactively, but it definitely helps, when you're in the trenches. And then I call, my financial and practical resources. And those things are personal physician. That is so important, especially to the African-American community. We don't always embrace, physicians. And I understand why historically we haven't trusted them and all that. And that's a conversation for another time. But I'm gonna tell you how important personal physicians were. I told you early on that it was my husband's personal physician that urged me to go to the hospital, for one. And then he actually opened up the doors for us to be able to get there, for somebody to be waiting for us. Now, if you remember the beginning of the COVID pandemic, you needed to have a physician to even get a COVID test. There were people who were getting turned away from the ER and they never made it. They knew they were sick. They ended up dying because they didn't have anybody to advocate for them to simply get a test. If you had a personal physician, there's a strong possibility that, this episode would have gone a lot different for you. And it definitely did for us. Our, relationships with personal physicians meant everything. So I definitely cannot, I just can't overemphasize that enough. Health insurance, just having good health insurance, having health insurance, period. I call it Barack Obama, our forever president. He fought so hard for everybody of all different, income levels to have access to affordable care. We have to have health care. And there's another reason why a lot of people die, especially people that look like us, because they didn't have health care and they were afraid to even go get treated because of the financial, ramifications that they would have to deal with. So good healthcare, you've got to have a health insurance plan, right? And then I talk about documentation, the importance of having your living wills, your power of attorneys, and your last wills, all those things, because again, I had to take over a lot of my husband's affairs. Now they knew we were married, so I had legally the right to make decisions for him, but I never had anybody question me because I had that documentation, and I had all of his, wishes and things. So you just never know, but I strongly suggest people get those things together proactively. And insurance benefits. This is really very near and dear to my heart. So, we talked about health insurance, but then you have what is called your living insurances. And that's like disability and long-term care insurances. Those are the insurances that will protect you if you get sick, if you're unable to work and you need income or you need money to take care of you. Those were things, that really made a difference in our situation. And I strongly advocate for those things. And then last but not least, I talk about, life insurances, which is kind of an oxymoron because life insurances are really death insurances. So, for like your final expenses and your burial insurances. And thank God we didn't have to use those, but we did have them. And that, gives you peace of mind. But the whole importance of that is really, just making sure that if something happens to you, that you don't leave a financial burden on your family, and then also what a lot of us don't know is that some life insurance policies, whole life insurance policies, can also be utilized as income in many cases. You can tap into them in situations like this. If you end up in a bind and you can't work or whatever the case may be, and you need, to have access to a lump sum, which many people needed last year. A lot of people went under because they lost their jobs and, or their health or all the above. So I could go on forever. This is something that's really passionate, for me, but for the sake of time, those are, some of the key. I think I gave you like the 5 key, like spiritual and financial slash, practical resources that, I really, really advocate for, in order to be prepared for the next crisis.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah,
We need that. We need that
we
spiritual
do.
component. Then we need the other components as well to know
Yes,
how to plan, how to be prepared. Because
yes,
I think sometimes people have the mentality that it happens to everybody else. This will never happen to me. You
yes,
just never know at some point, and you want to be ready, right? And
yes,
I just know this from personal experience as
yes,
I'm listening to you talk,
yes,
and how it changes the circumstance, because you're already in a crisis, you're already dealing with that stress and maybe
yes,
anxious. But if you add all those other things where you weren't prepared, you didn't have the will
yes,
in place, you didn't have the insurance in place, you didn't have the power of attorney,
yes,
who wants to be trying to figure that out at the last
yes,
minute, or
yes.
who is going to make decisions on my behalf when I can't do it for myself?
Yes, that's right. And you want to make sure that your decisions are, conveyed, that people
Yes.
are doing the things that you want them to do. You may not want to be revived, or you may want to be revived, and you want to make sure you have that documented so
Exactly.
that people can carry out your wishes. People say, well, I don't need a will, or I don't have anything. You do. You got children, you got, you have you need to let people know your wishes. Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? Where do you want to be buried? There's so much that goes into that.
Yes, it is.
And if you're not interested in doing these things for yourself, then do it for your family, because what you'll do is essentially take that burden away from them. So
Absolutely.
yeah, those things are everything, because it can definitely eliminate a lot of unnecessary stress during an already stressful time, as you pointed out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So what
Yeah.
made you decide to write the book? I mean, it's such, again, a powerful story. When did you decide to write this book, and why?
Yeah, so when my husband came home from the hospital last May, I had my hands full because he literally, came home. He had to restore. It was like, a little baby. He needed a whole bunch of hand holding and rehabilitation and all that kind of stuff. But as he started to get better, we were both here. We were, remote, and he wasn't working at that time. But I had a lot of just interest in our story because, again, it was so early on in the pandemic, and he had survived against all odds. So we had a lot of, local media coverage. They actually covered his hospital release from Johns Hopkins. And it was, just a lot of interest. And so, people just started saying, you really should put your story into a book. And I had no intentions of writing a book last year, 2020, and definitely not writing my survival story. You could have never told me that that was what I was going to be writing a book on. But as God would have it, as I alluded to earlier, when he was in the hospital, I was literally like jotting down his progress notes every time I would talk to a physician, several times a day, any of his healthcare providers. So I had progress notes. I ended up with a binder like this thick of just notes. Then I was on the back end, I was journaling as well, just my own personal kind of thought processes, conversations with God. And then I also had a major text trail because I was texting. That's how I was communicating with my prayer group. So through those things, I just had major content and literally had the whole journey already documented. And again, in my mind, I was just staying sane and just organized. I didn't know that, God was actually laying out the foundation for me to write a book. And so when I got this idea, I prayed on it. I was like, this is really not far-fetched because I really do have a lot of content. At this point, I just need to really just organize it because it was all handwritten and, digital text. I really need to organize it and really just form the story around it. But I have the content. And so, I really prayed on it and, some resources started to come. God sent me, a really good editor to help me get everything together. Because again, I didn't know anything about writing a book. I've always written because I just like to write and I like to journal, but, just recreational, not professionally. And so, again, the only thing I can say is divine intervention, because when things are meant to be, everything just works out, just falls into place. And so, I started on that journey and just started letting people know, what I was looking to do, and just kind of asking around people who had already written books or new people. And, I started getting like different referrals and different things, and everything just kind of fell in place. It was like my content, my resources. And then I just ended up just building a really good team, and the rest is really history. Yeah.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
what would you hope your readers would take away from your inspiring story, you and your husband?
Uh, two things. Again, the power of prayer, the power of faith. I can't stress that enough. I do, and I know that's not something that's on everyone's radar, but oh my goodness, if it's not, it should be. After last year, I don't even know how you could even make it. This world is just so uncertain and just so scary, and you have to believe. You have to have belief in a higher power. You will literally drive yourself crazy if you really just chalk this all up to you. It's just too much. It's way too much. You know what I mean? You just gotta, pray for daily hedge of protection and healing. And oh my God, there's just so many different things, So faith and prayers, those are, probably the biggest things. And then again, I really want people to just really understand, just the importance of having their financial house in order. And again, just proactively pre-planning, or, it just makes all the difference. Again, it's not, if you're going to go through a storm, it's it's when. And so you want to be prepared when that happens. And I can't stress that enough. So, I have a little advantage because I'm an insurance agent, so I know a little more about these things than the average person. But I'll tell you, like a personal story, like my husband, when we first got married and, we started merging our assets and stuff, I already had my long-term kind of handled because I've seen young people be sick and I've seen old people live and all that. So I know regardless of your age or your current situation, things can change and you need to have insurance. So, that's me. My husband, on the other hand, he was just like, I was trying to get him to get a long-term care plan. He's like, look, I'm a former athlete. He was an athlete all his life. I'm healthy. Like, I don't need that. You know what I mean? Like, that's where when I get old kind of thing, right? He was like a little hesitant, honestly, right? I use myself as, as an example. And I was like, no, babe, this is why you need it. And I had to break it down for him. And we had just finished going through, burying his father, and his father could have really have benefited from that. And so I think that's probably what really, brought him on board. But he fought me tooth and nail on that, But here's the funny thing. After he came out of his coma and we started talking about, next steps and coming home and rehabilitation. And like I said, when he came home, he was jacked up. He needed a lot of help. He was like a little baby, The only thing he could do is feed himself, but he needed help with washing and dressing and, everything, right? And so and I was here by myself. I had plenty of family support, but they couldn't come in because he was so vulnerable. I just couldn't have anybody in my house like that.
Right.
So, fast forward, my husband said, what about that long-term care plan? He was so proud that he had that long-term care plan because that's what we were able to use to be able to pay for some outside help to come into our house when he couldn't, fend for himself. And so, we use our story as a personal testimony. And that was somebody, you know, who was not feeling it at all. He was very resistant. And even so, he was reluctant, but he still, neither one of us thought literally that he was going to end up needing it 6 years later. And because of an unforeseen pandemic, no one could have forecasted that, right? Exactly. But, you know, again, thank God that we did, right? So, you know, that's another, you know, key takeaway. And that's why, you know, we talk about the book, you know, we want to tell our story from a faith-based perspective, because you have to know that it was God that brought us through. Yeah. Well, on the other side too, you know, I need you to understand the importance of, you know, the resources that God gives us, right? And the importance of utilizing them, because nowadays, you know, we're doing better now. You know, a lot of us are doing better than we ever dreamed of, and our parents have dreamed of, right? That our parents ever making more money than ever. But, you know, we weren't taught these things, you know, and there's other ethnic groups that are like light years ahead of us on this stuff. And so now I feel like it's kind of my God-given charge now to tell people, hey, not only did we make it, but this is how, and this is how you can as well, you know. So that's, you know, really what it's all about for us. You know, we made it, we won, thank God. And now we want others to be able to do the same.
Awesome. And how is your husband doing now? And how is the family?
Great. Everybody is doing great. He is a living miracle. You know, he is, he's back to work. He's working remotely, you know, he's doing really good. And all I can say is he's a living miracle. I mean, he'll look like anything that he's been through. You would never know. You know, he lost about 50 pounds. He's gained it back. He's a fat boy. He likes to eat. So yeah, he's doing great. He's doing really good, you know, and he's, you know, he has some long-term effects. You know, it's been a year and a half now. You know, he had major issues with his arm. He had, you know, his arm from being in the prone position. He had some nerve damage in his arm. He's still working through that. And he has some sleep issues too, but you know, nothing like what he had been through, and nothing like, you know, where he could be based on where he was, you know, several months ago. So we're just grateful. He's a living miracle. And again, if you don't believe in the power of God, you read this book. Read this book, because it's nothing but God. This is nothing but God blessing. Nothing but.
That is amazing. What a blessing.
Yeah.
And it's been so great having you here. Interview you regarding your book, Praying Wife, Healed Husband. I know it's going to be a blessing to so many people. And so I'm so happy to share it with our audience and get the message out there, because I know how important this information is, the importance of having resources and tools at your disposal, and have people that are utilizing their story to help others not have to go through it. Or if you have to go through it, then you're more prepared, right?
Absolutely.
You're more prepared when you do have to go through a particular situation. So thank you so much for sharing your book and your story. So just remind our audience about the book, right? And where can they go buy it?
Yes, so Praying Wife, Healed Husband, How We Survived a Death-Defying COVID-19 Experience, with all the spiritual and financial and practical resources to help you be able to win. Also, you can find us at prayingwifehelps.com. I would love if you got on there and just let me know what you think, you know, about the book. Let me know if you're interested in hearing about how we can help you implement any of those resources. You can buy the book on the site, and it's also available on Amazon, on Key Bookstore, as well as barnesandnobles.com, and pretty much any online book reseller. You should be able to get it.
Awesome. So we hope you all go out and get it. We know that you will be empowered and inspired. We'll definitely make sure we have it in the show notes of the video. Make sure we have it in the comments as well, so you can go get it. The website is right up there in front of you. So head on over to go get this book. So again, just want to thank you so much again, Marcy, for coming on and sharing your story with us. We greatly appreciate it. Audience, viewers, if we love spotlighting women in business. If you are an author, whether you're launching a new book or you have a book that's been on the market and it's making an impact, and you want to make an impact, We invite you to participate in our She Boss Author Spotlights. We only have a few a year, so we're now planning for the upcoming season of 2022. Can you believe we're almost in 2022? It's almost the end of 2021. But it's a great opportunity. So if you want to learn how to be a part of the show, how to get spotlighted, get your brand out there, get your book out there, visit us at www.shebosstalk.com and follow us, connect with us. Let's get social, where you can find us all across social media, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, LinkedIn. We're everywhere. So we want to see you and we want to connect with you, and we want to hear your story, because your story is powerful, just like Marcy and her husband and her family. And again, we're so thankful that you have the opportunity to be here to share this story, to share the miraculousness of God and how he provides those resources for us, and how you were able to overcome. So thank you again for being part of this show. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for having us, and they can also follow us on Praying Wife Helps. That's our handle for all social media. Thank you.
Thank you.